slides كمان. And we are live from the Radisson Hotel in Dera, the old Intercontinental Hotel, the one and only. And I'm sitting here with Hiba Jaber.
Hello, Laura.
From the Dubai Real Estate Institute. So good afternoon, February the 19th. We're very happy to be here today. I am your host and MC. I think you're tired of hearing my name, but I'll tell you anyway. My name is Laura Schwery, and I am a seasoned real estate professional in the UAE, an expert in the real estate industry, proudly so, in Dubai and in other parts of the world, not many. And I'm the owner of Schwery Real Estate and the chairman, founder of Realopedia, an ecosystem, an e-marketplace dedicated to the real estate industry for all stakeholders. So if you are an agent, a broker, a developer, if you are licensed, if you are an industry specialist, if you support the industry in any which way or form, if you're an investor, we welcome you on Realopedia. The webinar information today, just so that you know that if you happen to miss the webinar or you have to go to a meeting, don't worry. If you're registered, you will receive the webinar link. And if you are a member of Realopedia, you will receive the webinar link irrespective with the content of this presentation. So the topics today are from Dubai Real Estate Institute, the education arm of the Dubai Land Department, is know your rights for investors when buying off-plan properties in Dubai. I know we bring this up a lot, but there are always questions on investor rights. And believe it or not, many people do not know till today that there are very stringent investor laws that protect your rights. Funnily so, I was just speaking to somebody recently in North Africa, and they didn't even know that there was anything called investor rights. So we're very happy to have you here today, Hiba, to take us through the laws. And Realopedia will talk to you about why investors and what investors should know when choosing a brokerage company or a real estate agent. So our speaker today, Hiba Jaber, is also a very seasoned real estate specialist in Dubai and also the senior advisor and trainer at the Dubai Land Department. Hiba comes with a wealth of experience in the real estate industry, an auditor with KPMG in Chicago. She's American Lebanese residing in Dubai. So again, for those of you that live in the US, yes, there are Americans living in the Middle East. And yes, we are very happy here. And Hiba was also the Chief Operating Officer at Landmark Properties, a very well-known and reputable company that was bought out many years ago in Dubai. She's a member of the National Association of Realtors, as I am. She is an international realtor member, and she is certified CRB and ARB, which are very strong designations in the United States in the real estate industry. So without further ado, Hiba is going to take you through Know Your Rights for Investors when buying off-plan properties in Dubai. Welcome, Hiba.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's always a pleasure to join you on your webinar sessions. And again, thank you for having Realopedia allow us that type of platform in order to educate investors, buyers, and of course, we're hoping in future sessions to bring or to shed more lights on landlords and tenants' rights.
Excellent. Excellent.
So again, no reason to reintroduce this. We are going to be focusing on investors' rights when buying off-plan or under construction properties in Dubai. Under Law 8 of 2007, developers that intend to sell units off-plan, they need to have an escrow account. They need to open up an escrow account for the project with an escrow agent. That escrow agent is a bank or a financial institution accredited by Dubai Land Department. The developer must deposit all the money that is received from selling the units off-plan into the escrow account. The amount deposited in the escrow account are allocated exclusively for the purpose of constructing that specific real estate development project. Project escrow accounts are audited. They're monitored on a regular basis by RERA. The escrow account must be in the name of the project. So if the developer happens to have more than one project under construction, you need to have a separate escrow account for each and every project.
So let me ask you a question. So what we're telling the audience here is that for their benefit, they should know that anytime a developer is going to launch a project, he must obtain the approval from RERA.
100%.
And each project has its own real estate, has its own number, project number,
correct,
and its own escrow account.
Correct.
Without that, we cannot, or they cannot launch a project.
Correct.
Okay.
100%.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Excellent.
And that's exactly what we need you guys to be aware of. Because again, the law came out a while ago, but what I'm surprised about, as you pointed out rightfully, is that there's still people not aware of the process. And we just want to make sure that hopefully through these series of webinars, we extend to you that knowledge.
What's also very important, Hiba, is that because there were some, let's say, some foul play on escrow accounts a few years ago, not a few years ago, but prior to these rules and regulations, it's very important for the investors to know that that is impossible to happen today. When we say an escrow account, that means that escrow account is as tight as a safe that cannot be opened with explosives.
It's a trust account.
It's a trust account.
Absolutely.
So that is super important for the audience to understand this, and that their money is 100% secure.
That is 100%. And again, Laura, the reason why sometimes I find it that people may go ahead and purchase a property and pay into the developer's bank accounts, it's because they are willing to take risks when they don't know exactly at the end how this is going to play off. Sometimes, unfortunately, as a human being, when you have a developer that might say, I'm going to offer you a unit at that much of a discount.
Okay.
But the trick is you have to pay me into my bank account. You need to know that you need to ask these questions. You need to know that you're taking that risk.
But I have been in situations, and you know that I'm active in the real estate market in Dubai, that I have been in developers' offices, and they have said that the initial booking fee or booking deposit is not necessarily in the escrow. It is made out to the developer. Now, is that acceptable?
So basically, again, that's something that we're going to come across.
Okay.
There is a certain percentage that the developer is allowed to basically use initially to market the project.
Fantastic.
Including broker's commission, which makes sense because they're the one basically aiding them in selling that project off plan.
Okay.
And talking about percentages, it takes me straight to the next point, where 5% of the money that is deposited in the escrow account needs to remain in the account for 1 year after registering the units in the buyer's name. And that's because the developer remains responsible for any electrical, mechanical, plumbing type of issues related to the project for 1 year after registering the unit in the buyer's name.
Okay.
All disposals,
again,
we're talking about sales in this case, need to be registered in what we call the interim real estate register. We know it here as OCUD.
Okay.
Such disposals should be or would be considered null and void if not registered in the interim real estate register. Upon developer obtaining certificate of completion for the project, the transfer of title must be registered in the real estate register at Dubai Land Department. So in other words, what I'm trying to say here, Laura, is you buy an off plan, you still have to register your ownership, you pay 4%, property gets ready. That's when you kind of move from the OCUD interim real estate register to the title deed.
But there's one fee only, which is 4%. There isn't a fee for OCUD.
Nope.
And so when you're paying, unless the developer waives the 4%, but then that would
and
be,
some are,
and some
in
are,
today's market.
that would be clearly mentioned on the sale document, and they would be responsible, they as in the developer, for paying that 4%. And you will not have to pay neither an OCUD fee or a 4%. So it's not two fees, it's
Absolutely,
one.
absolutely.
That is another confusion in the market.
And I'm so glad you brought this up because I get this question all the time. People think, well, I bought off plan, I paid 4%, now I need the title deed, do I need another 4%? No, it's a one-time payment. And again, as you rightfully just suggested, that you know, and I kind of want to use that word waive in a very careful way because it's not payable to the developer, it's paid to Dubai Land Department. You're registering your right of ownership. So when we say developer are waiving, in other words, what we're saying is they're picking up that fee.
Perfect.
But they still have to register it in order to protect your rights. And again, registration fees are 4% 2-2 unless otherwise agreed. And this is basically based on the market
That's
conditions.
a market condition, yeah.
Key questions investors need to ask when buying real estate off plan. Is the developer registered with RERA? So today you're buying property. That's number one question that you need to ask if you're buying it off plan. Does the developer own the development land? Huge, right? And again, why? Because a developer, according to the law, shall not commence a project or sell its units off plan unless and until the developer has taken possession of the plot on which the project is to be constructed. DLD requires the developer takes ownership of the plot on which the project will be built, and to obtain an unconditional bank guarantee from the UAE bank for the amount of 20% of the project value. Otherwise, the developer needs to complete construction of 20% of the project.
Okay. Before he is allowed to sell, or before he's allowed to launch?
Before he's licensed.
Before he's licensed. Okay.
Exactly. It's one of the requirements of the license.
I always tell clients, and I tell whoever asks, interview the developer, interview the agent, interview who you're speaking to, interview who you are entrusting. It is your right to do so.
Agreed.
And
especially when you have, lots of opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're technically spending a lot of money. A real estate purchase is not a minor purchase in any way, shape, or form. So absolutely conduct your due diligence and ask questions.
Excellent.
Does the developer have the required permits and approvals from DLD and RERA to sell units off plan in the relevant project? So again, in order for the developer to get the permit, he needs to have the following documentation in place: proof of possession of the plot, what I just, explained, project name, open a trust account for the project, produce a copy of the escrow account agreement with the escrow account agent, in other words, the bank, submit a copy of RERA's developer registration certificate, approval from Dubai municipality for the development plans, approval from DLD for the CAD drawing, submit a copy of the proposed SPA, which also needs to be approved by RERA. Any agency broker agreement must be also registered with RERA by the developer in order to protect the broker's rights as well. Because like you said, it's really about every single stakeholder within the industry is what we're looking at protecting. And submit a copy of the proposed marketing or advertising material. Another question that you need to also ask is the real estate project registered with RERA? Is there an escrow account? What is the escrow account number? Again, it seems like we're repeating ourselves, but you said it beautifully at the beginning of the session. And the name of the escrow account agent, and what is the percentage of completion of the project and the expected date of completion?
Hiba, I'll be honest with you. I can say that most people that are in the real estate world, and even investors, it doesn't matter who they are, bankers, lawyers, whoever, when they come to purchase, many people, well, maybe not lawyers, I will take that back, but they do not know that all of this goes into receiving the permit to be able to launch the project. There are so many details, for instance, from the drawing, the design, to the approvals, to submission, to marketing,
DLD, RERA.
That alone is a 2-year, that could be a 2-year process. And people don't understand that there's so much work that goes into it. Therefore, they are more secure now than ever when purchasing a property. Even brokers, it's interesting when I look at this, for instance, I didn't know that the marketing and advertisement, proposal had to be submitted along with the project. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. I didn't know that the commission structure had to be approved at this stage.
Yep.
Of entry.
And that's registered.
And actually, that is a security for the real estate brokerage. So if a developer does not pay that agent,
he has rights.
He has rights today.
Absolutely.
So this is actually a two-sided.
And again, that's why I touched upon what you said at the beginning of the session. The whole point here is protecting all stakeholders, not just one, right? And everybody, as long as you do things. And again, we're going to touch upon the importance of you being a registered broker, so that's another thing. Nobody's going to protect your rights if you're not a registered broker. So broker registered, developer registered, project registered, escrow account. And basically now as a buyer, you can come in recognizing that you're investing in a legit protected project.
Fantastic. Good.
answers to investors' frequently asked questions. And I usually get a lot of that, to be honest, even part of my training sessions that I constantly conduct at Dubai Real Estate Institute. And this is a bit surprising. This is a bit surprising because I thought that there is enough knowledge out there in the market that you as a foreign national can buy property on a freehold basis in Dubai. I find it that sometimes when I go to the US in the summer, again, for those of you, our US audience, they're like, oh, really? I can buy a property in Dubai? So some of the things
It's
that we take for
amazing
granted.
that there are so many Americans that came out here.
Yes,
and
yes.
they still don't realize that.
I think some of the things that we take for granted, you just assume that everybody knows because we're in it, right? So this is what we're hoping that we establish in this session. Yes, the answer is yes. Foreign nationals can own properties in Dubai on a freehold basis, but in certain designated areas. This is what I want to focus on. It's not any area in Dubai. However, those designated areas are growing.
But it's interesting, those designated areas, the Jumeirah, Suqaim area, etc., that used to be just for nationals. Now you have pockets that are now for foreigners. So it's interesting that even those areas that are for nationals are now have areas that are for foreigners.
Absolutely.
And so in a way, we actually can buy pretty much anywhere except for places like, you know, Mizhid or, but then you
and
look,
maybe that's going to change.
And maybe that will change one day because, you know,
Yep.
with all the projects, the Pearl project that are heading down that way, there are going to be areas and pockets of foreign. Well, there are actually, when you go towards the Hyatt Regency in Dera, there are all these new projects now and all the Miras land projects. So there you go. I mean, even so you're near,
there you go.
So you've got the, you're pretty much infiltrated into all areas as a foreigner. And being that we've been here as long as we have, did we ever think 26 or 30 years ago that this was even possible? Wow.
Exactly. And to be honest, I don't want to take credit for this phrase. I don't know who said it, but they said something interesting that I always quote every time I teach. The only constant in Dubai's real estate market is change itself. Because it's constantly changing.
Sure,
I mean, so this is why, again, some of the exciting, I think that's why you love your job. I love what we do, is it's challenging.
36 years, Peva. 36 years in real estate.
But she still looks good, and that's what I want to highlight. When can a developer withdraw funds from the escrow account? Again, this is something that a lot of people may not be aware of. It's tied to the certified progress of the project. So a developer may be reimbursed from the relevant escrow account, again, like I initially said, for the 5% for the marketing and the agent's commission. Can a developer charge transfer fees? I get this question a lot.
But excuse me, the 5% that you're talking about that may be reimbursed, that is actually the 5% that is in the escrow account, or 5% that the developer can already have in his name at the onset in terms of deposits that are taken?
That's different, right? So again, I want to be very honest with you here. Sometimes this is where I potentially would love to have a legal person with us, because I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where I had people say, no, this is him collecting the 5% to do what he needs to do. Some saying, no, it still has to be deposited and then he's allowed to take it.
But I think either or wouldn't matter, because it's going to be 5% that is noted to this project that is taken for X, because if the marketing and advertisement is submitted at the very beginning, it's within that initial plan before he takes his permit, that 5%, whether he takes it at the beginning or has it, or within the escrow, but it's good. It could be either or, which is fine.
This is some of the times when I'm like legal, but no, you know what? And sometimes they don't even. Either way, it's protected.
Either way, it's protected.
It is controlled. It is
which comes back to the money that you will pay to a reputable developer. And there are reputable developers in Dubai, and there are developers that I'm not comfortable with, and I think that goes for anywhere in the world. But those that are, that have good names and they've maintained the test of time, I would not have any issues making checks to them directly, even as myself. And there are others that I would have to question more as to, I would be more comfortable at going into the escrow. And others, I'm more than fine than making the check to them. So I think it depends on, there's a lot to think about when you're making that.
And nothing exclusive to Dubai. Anywhere in the world, there's reputable ones that that you can just simply, close your eyes and invest in.
What I mean is that here, whether the 5% or whether that initial deposit that you're making as an investor would be via the escrow or via the developer directly, I wouldn't have an issue with many of the developers, but some of the developers I would be more comfortable that it goes through the escrow. And I think that goes for here, I think that goes for anywhere, but being that we're in the market and we have a better feel of the dynamics, we're more, we're so seasoned, I suppose, here that we know, and we know which way to turn and who to go to and so on and so forth. However, everything is protected at the end of the day, and that's what's important.
In terms of transfer fees, I initially, as I said, they always are payable to Dubai Land Department, not to the developer. What the developer can charge is an admin fee, and that's for the issuance of what we call the no objection certificate, the NOC. Again, the developer has to make sure on every resale that happens of that specific property that there are no outstandings, there's no potentially something that the buyer has done, payments that hasn't been made, whatever the situation is, you need an NOC. The maximum charge for the off-plan property NOC is 5,000 dirhams. Can a creditor, and I get that a lot, this question, of the developer use the amount deposited in the escrow account as a security for his debt? And the answer is absolutely no, because that money is going strictly for the development of the real estate project.
Yeah, that's a very good highlight, because that may not have been
a lot of people
clear.
ask me that question, Laura. Yes. Does the buyer have the right to terminate his contract due to a developer's default? And again, there's a lot of specific that goes into that. So let's just go through it. Buyer may request the court to cancel his SPA with the developer under any of the scenarios listed in Article 20 of Decree 6 of 2010. If the developer refuses without a valid excuse to provide the buyer with a final SPA, if the developer fails to tie the payment schedule to RERA schedule, if the developer unilaterally and materially modified the unit, so for example, he promised you sea view, gave you park view, if the unit is unusable due to major structural defect or any other purpose permitting cancellation of contracts under civil law. Buyer must file a civil lawsuit in Dubai courts or arbitration, depending on the terms of the SPA, for the purpose of canceling the contract and refunding the money paid.
What about if the developer is late in his development, and under RERA, when he obtained his permit and he submitted all of his documents, he submitted his plan, and his construction plan and his escrow are tied in together, but for some reason, and we cannot, be privy to all reasons, his project is a year delayed or 8 months delayed. Does the investor have the right, even though there's a 10% remaining balance on the property, does the investor have the right to cancel his SPA?
So I'll tell you what I know, because again, I have to be careful that there are certain things that I wouldn't know because I'm not from a legal background. So let me explain to you what I know. So usually built into the SPA is almost like a grace period. Yeah. So the grace period, from my knowledge, could be a year, could be 6 months.
A grace period of what, Hiba?
For the delay. So basically, would have been already.
If that grace period
has elapsed,
But is that grace period when the developer submits for his permit? That grace period is discussed then. But I, as an investor, do I know about that grace period?
It's in the contract.
So in other words, read your contract.
Read your contract. And this is actually one of the points that I highlight. Read your contract, because
it's there.
It's there.
Yeah. Which is good, which is fantastic. But a lot of people don't read their contracts.
No, you're making me laugh.
Why?
Laura's making me laugh.
Why?
Because you guys, it's more fun when you see the faces that Laura makes at me. She's constantly smiling, encouraging me, and that's why I adore her. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Laura.
But people don't read their contracts. Believe it or not, till today,
and this is a huge thing, and I'm gonna honestly alert you to guys. And again, it's like, do I really need to get a legal person involved? Absolutely. You're spending potentially your whole life savings. Yes, I would potentially have a legal person read the contract and tells me. The sad part is,
or read it yourself, and if you find a clause that you're not comfortable with, then seek counsel.
Legal advice. Absolutely. Absolutely. Another point that I also get asked about is there's a difference in the the square meters, the actual size of the unit upon handover. So what I'm highlighting is, of course, what's stated in the law. So I just gave you guys an example to make it a bit more easier. So say a buyer buys 500 square meters for 1 million, but upon handover, the developer provides the unit, which is 250. Now that's a huge difference. That's material difference. He promised you 500 square meters. He delivered 250. So what's the call on this one? The size of the unit upon handover may vary slightly from the size mentioned in the contract, and that's as per Article 13 of Degree 6 of 2010 on regulating the interim real estate register. If the unit handed over is smaller by less than or equal to 5%, so this is your 5% rule, then the size of the contract, buyer is not entitled to compensation from the developer because the difference is considered marginal and acceptable.
And I'm sorry, when you say size, you're referring to the total size of the unit. You're not saying balcony size or unit size. You're talking about the size of the unit itself that has been sold?
Yes.
All inclusive?
Yes, my understanding is that absolutely. Now, if the unit is handed over by more than 5% smaller than the size of the contract, which is the case study that I presented earlier, then the buyer is entitled to compensation for any decrease in the property size.
Okay.
If the unit is materially or substantially smaller, the buyer may have a valid civil claim against the developer for cancellation and a refund of the contract price because that considered a
So more than 5%
breach.
he's allowed to cancel his
So
unit.
he has basically two options. Either go back to the developer, negotiate that he gives you some money back, or if you're not happy and you want to proceed with the legal way, then absolutely you can file a lawsuit.
Okay, so here's a question for you when you say proceed a legal way. Now, if I look at it from my perspective, and maybe this is not something that you can answer, but it's something that's actually quite important because so I buy a unit from X and it happens to be more than 5%. I actually, I'm not saying it's 6%. I'm saying it's substantially. It's substantial enough for me to not want it, or maybe I'm going through a financial crisis and it's a good excuse for me to renege. But then you say, go, take it to the next level that's legal. That means that I have to sit down and think that I have to hire a lawyer, which is costly, and this could take who knows how long, which is very costly. And so 9 times out of 10, you'll throw in the towel and say, what the heck, I'm not going to go for it. What I would like to see happen, as they say, bint السوق, the girl of the market, okay, is that
appealing to the Arabic crowd. Hoping you got that.
Yeah, because Mike is like, I sound like I'm walking around selling fruits and vegetables. So what I would like to see happen is that in these situations, being that it is my right as a buyer to either, I can go to the developer, say, Mr. Developer here, I want to, compensation. He says no. And so I say, okay, fine, we're not going to so I'll cancel. I don't want to feel that I have to go to a lawyer. I want to be able to go to a body in the Dubai Land Department that is going to protect me as I would be protected in Canada under a civil court. I don't need a lawyer. I can go there myself and appoint myself because I don't need a lawyer for that. Here's a contract from the Dubai Land Department. Here's a project number that has said you need all this criteria to receive a permit. And I have bought the unit as a fair and just investor, and my rights are not protected. So I want to be able to take my contract, my documentation with the developer where he has refused, and just go down to, this area and have it solved. Many years ago in Dubai, we used to do that in the rental committee. There was a rental committee. We used to go down there. We saw a very nice gentleman that was running it at the time. We would go down there. We would present our case, landlord, tenant, and it will be solved to the benefit of whoever had the case.
Which is still,
I don't feel that we don't
today.
have to, and I think it's fair to say that we should be able to go out there. How wonderful would that be? That we don't need, it's not a complex situation where you need a lawyer. You should be able to go and present yourself, because in this situation, and I know this is not part of the conversation here, but it's something that, would be, because we came back to the 5% smaller, etc.
Sure.
I have clients still today that have actually just thrown in the towel. And they've walked away because they could not get compensation. They did not have the money to pursue legal fees. And I have a lot of friends that are lawyers and I love them. but not everybody can afford to pay
Go down that route.
100,000 dirhams or 150 or 200, because you don't know how long it's going to take, and there's an hourly rate that ticks in,
Valid
right?
point. And
So-
so my take on this, and of course, you know,
And we can't
try
answer
as
for the
much as
government, but it
possible.
wouldn't be amazing if this.
But I see formation of committee. I see, like you said, Dubai has changed so much, and if anything, to the better.
I think that'll happen
I
down
think
the line.
your point is not necessarily the only person that's addressed this point. So I really see them creating back those committees where you just come in, present your case,
Yeah.
and your rights will be protected. I really believe in Dubai's vision. I really believe in everything that they've done so far to make it easier for the expat, to make it easier for investors, to invite investors and lure them to come and have that, you know, rights protected. So of course, don't quote me 100%, and I'm not going to tell you it's going to happen tomorrow, but I definitely see committees being formed.
Can you imagine somebody sitting in Switzerland that has to hire a lawyer or fly to Dubai to address such a case? Nobody's going to do that.
Sure.
And you don't want to leave a negative taste on somebody's tongue. So, you know, moving right along.
Does the developer have a right to terminate the contract due to buyer's default? So there's always two sides of the story,
Absolutely.
right? And yes, and that was actually in November 2017, law number 19 of 2017 amended some of the procedures that were initially dates back to 2008. You know, again, I don't know how much time we have, Laura. I don't know if you want me to go through the step by step, but it is there for the audience. Like you said, they have access to the slides, and of course, they can read it on their own time. But they do have, developers also have rights in case of buyer's defaults,
which is important. Absolutely.
So in summary, a couple of things that I really want to highlight, which I think we've made that point. Do your due diligence, conduct your due diligence, ask questions, information that's important on the construction status of the project and whether the developer and the project are registered are freely available on the Dubai Land Department website, www.dubailand.gov.ae. And of course, feel free to download our smart application, which is Dubai Rest Smart Application. You can download it any part of the world as long as you have a smartphone, and you can actually track the construction status of the project. I actually tested it recently. It's amazing. Negotiate with the developer to make changes to the standard contract to ensure that the buyer's interests are protected. And again, it goes back to, if you're in doubt, make sure that you seek the advice of a qualified legal consultant. When an off-plan property is purchased, the buyer should ensure the contract is registered in Uqud. Once the price is paid in full and the building is complete, the buyer's interest as an owner should be registered in the real estate register. In other words, that's when you get your title deed. If you are using a broker, ensure that he or she is properly licensed by RERA. There's a written agreement detailing when and how much he needs to be paid and how he gets paid. A broker's commission usually in the resale market is about 2% of the purchase price. But again, sometimes the broker does get paid by the developer, especially when he's selling his off-plan unit for that specific developer.
I just want to reiterate here, when you say broker's commission is normally 2% of the purchase price, so that people know this is not set in stone. This is something that's just a generality.
It's not a law.
Exactly. A broker's commission, they could be representing both buyer and seller. So they would, it doesn't mean that they take commission from one party. It's 2% from each party. And there are many times a commission that an agent can take 3 to 5%, depending on what kind of a contract it is. Is it commercial? Is it residential? Is it land? Is it not? Is it building? Is it assets? So this is just a very standard 2% of the purchase price. For those investors that are listening, if an agent is representing both buyer and seller, which happens, it does not mean that they give up one side of the commission.
Absolutely not.
Because one has nothing to do with the other. It takes time to find an investor, a lot of investment to find an investor. It takes a lot of time to be able to gain the property. And many times people don't know how much time that takes from the agent's life. And so that's important to.
And one thing just to add on that, Laura, is again, the only thing is that we promise, or we want you guys to advocate, is full disclosure.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, you're doing a service for every party. There's no reason for someone to tell you why you're charging both.
Yeah.
Seller, there's a lot that you need to do in order to get to that point. For the buyer, there's a lot that you do for them as well, subject to full disclosure, just because we value transparency in any dealing. Canceled projects, this is something that we also like to bring light to. This is an example where a committee was in a way created, made up of at least three judges from the Dubai courts, and what they handle, what they focus on are canceled project, not delayed project, not stalled projects. But this is where I'm saying is I can potentially see committees forming if there's ever disputes.
But Hiba, question,
Sure.
if a developer's project is canceled by order of RERA, the developer must refund the full amount paid by the buyer. Now, if the money has gone into escrow by a buyer, and that money has been paid towards the construction phase, the construction phase is linked with escrow, the buyer will not be reimbursed the full amount that they paid.
Well, that was
obviously,
under
correct?
the old law, right?
Okay.
So now under decree number 21 of 2013, they created a committee.
Mhm.
That committee basically is mandated to take care of the liquidation of that project. So now you have the escrow account, who's going to get what? They might have to hire experts. There's going to be money that's going to be paid. So this is technically what now happens, basically involving canceled projects.
So you receive a percentage of what you've paid.
Potentially,
Yeah, so-
maybe a big percentage, maybe it's up to the committee. Their decision is final, and they're really judges from the Dubai courts.
How long into the project is a developer? Is there a certain time frame where a developer can cancel a project and then after that he cannot?
Well, a developer, it's not up to him to cancel a project. Remember, this has to be done by an order of RERA. So it's not up to the developer saying, oh, I can't do this anymore, I'm going to cancel it. It has to be done through Dubai Land Department and RERA.
And
they are the
reasons would
only
be?
authority, because they have to do their own due diligence and decide exactly, again, canceling a project, that's a big thing.
So
right?
it always comes back to buy from a reputable developer, buy from somebody that has a track record, buy from those that have the track record of delivering, so that you're not faced with projects. Look at your developer and see if they've had canceled projects in the past before investing your money in a development project.
Ask, and this is where, again, the use of a very professional, educated, licensed broker comes in.
Absolutely.
Which takes us straight into, I guess, your part now, because I'm looking forward to know what you have to add for that.
So in closing, do you want to just close?
Pretty much already addressed that.
Fantastic.
So we can take it to you now. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to say thank you, Hiba. This is very informative.
Laura.
I love asking questions along the way, because you learn, and no matter how much I know about the market, it's always good to know that there's always something that I don't know. So it's just a learning, it's a learning curve. And again, this will be shared with all the members and all the members of Realopedia, and also those that are registered online. So this will go out to thousands of people. So hopefully in light, people understand that the investor laws are they're quite stringent and important.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much.
Dubai Real Estate Institute is always here to support you and, again, spread awareness and knowledge in the market.
Well, we're very happy to be partners with Dubai Real Estate Institute, and and we actually, I don't know if you know this, but when Realopedia was first launched as a concept, we were actually endorsed as a trusted e-marketplace for investors and customers, because we're actually very stringent on developers, rules, regulations, agents, brokers. We're actually integrated with RERA. I don't know if you know that, but any broker or agent in Dubai that is not licensed, if they register manually on Realopedia, they wouldn't be able to upload their property because they're not their card is not validated. So if your broker license expires tomorrow and you're actually on Realopedia, after tomorrow, unless you have reactivated your card, you automatically are disabled. You're out. And the reason is to create a trusted e-marketplace is not, we could have bought databases from around the world, but that does not mean that is a added value. And we didn't want that. We're not a listing portal. It's an e-marketplace for all the players of the real estate market. I like to call ourselves the Amazons of the real estate industry. So maybe one day we'll be as big as Amazon. So Realopedia is a dedicated ecosystem for the real estate industry. The word ecosystem was actually chosen by one of our American partners in California, and they loved the concept way back when we introduced it in California years ago at one of the NAR events. So there's the B2B business networking, which brings the real estate industry specialists together on a central platform or a central marketplace, and it touches over the residential, commercial, investment, real estate. And then it has the B2C element, which offers investors and customers a myriad of opportunities. We always, this word B2B, B2C, today it's more P2P, person to person, but we dissect it in B2B because people don't understand. But person to person means there's no middleman, which means that whoever you're speaking to on Realopedia is the actual representative of that project. We don't accept anybody that is a middleman or representing someone, or that doesn't have a license or has a registration, is living in Panama and selling property. We don't accept that.
Because that could potentially add to the fees, right? So that's a good point to highlight.
We make sure that if you're speaking to somebody, I mean, we cannot vouch for every single agent on board. We have 300,000 agents, but we cannot vouch for the ethics of each one. It is up to the users to give a survey on each person that they've dealt with. It's more about bringing the network together. It's like walking into a marketplace and finding all the players that are in real estate. Go to a yoga fest, everybody that participates in yoga, from building, from selling clothes to sneakers to yoga poles, you go there, and so it's the same concept. We want everybody that's in this ecosystem to be on Realopedia and be a one-stop shop to buy, sell, and market their services. So what are the tips to investors when choosing a brokerage or an agent? Well, agents have formal certifications and specializations, and you need to make sure that you are very well aware of those specifications, rules, regulations, laws that are associated with the country of where you hold your real estate license. And to have a track record, as we said earlier, you've addressed this in many of your sessions with us. It's important for the agent, for the client to interview the agent. Where, are they a new agent? Do they just, you've just given a class to what, 60, 100 people when we before we started the session? They just started. They don't know enough, but that doesn't mean that they're not relevant. But they could have a lot of knowledge and in the market.
Or they could connect you with someone.
Or they can connect you with someone that is in the industry, because the industry, you need to have a network of those that are supporting the industry, from a mortgage broker to a fit out company to a moving company. I asked somebody a long time ago that I interviewed that was in Dubai for 15 years when I had 35, 40 agents at Shway Real Estate. I said, who's the ruler of Dubai? And they didn't know. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You don't know who the ruler of Dubai is, but you live here. I said, and I asked them, I said, how many Emirates do we have? And they didn't know. And I'm like, how could you even bring something?
How can you sell
board?
the country when you don't know it very well?
Do you read the newspaper in the morning? No. Do you know what? No. Well, you know what? Goodbye. Because how can you sell something how can you be so mentally cemented when you don't know? This is,
it's
I think your hairdresser knows more about the market.
How you and I are like so in tune, because today in my training, I asked a question about an article that was in the paper last night, and only 2 people had read it. It's a weird article. It's like a mom who bit a policeman for trying to arrest her son, but
it's a conversation piece, because
it was, but only 2 people, and it was so I connected with these people because I felt they're on my level.
But it's not that. Can you imagine you're going to they always say when you go and you meet an investor or you're starting a business conversation, if you zoom in to, and that's something I had to learn along the way, that I'm in a rush, I want to talk about what you need to ease into the client. You need to understand them. The first 15 minutes is always social talk. And they could have brought up the mom that bit the policeman. And if you're like, duh, I didn't read the paper, then they could probably ask you another question about something in the paper yesterday or last week. And then they'll realize you really don't know very much.
You have no idea.
And you don't know idea what you're talking about. So it's very important. And I always say, your experience in the market, how long you've been in the industry, what do you know about the country you're working in? Do you know where the nearest schools are? Do you know whether you're in commercial real estate or residential real estate? You need to know who are the players, where are they, who are the providers, where are they? And you need to understand more, dig deep. And also the investor, I tell them, interview the agent. I ask people, let me see your ID. I'm in the real estate industry and I want to know, if I'm speaking to a broker, which company are you with? Well, unless I know them. And then they say, well, we don't have our ID. I'm like, really? You don't, interview people.
Absolutely,
and do you interview,
Absolutely. And you know what, just a point here that a lot of people, like, especially because Dubai, right? We're multicultural. A lot of us are here as expats. When they meet the agent, sometimes, like you said, they end up having that element of trust. So they do ask them, where do you go to do your hair, or where do your kids go to school, or who's your pediatrician? Because back home it was natural. You go to the one who's been in your family for like forever, or now his son is the pediatrician. But here you come, and so I go to Laura. Where do I go? Where do I do this? Simple things.
It's funny.
That's how you earn the trust.
It's funny, when the market sort of took a toll in 2007, the calls that I would get from people over the years about, where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? Where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? I'm like, wow. I said, all of these questions, and you're still asking, where do I buy from here? Where do I go? Imagine, where do I buy in Spain? Where do I buy in Italy? I'm like, why are you asking me? Because we know that you give us the right advice. And that's in many ways why, this whole Realopedia came about, because I thought, bring in these trusted people from around the world, bring them onto a central area where everybody can speak to each other and hopefully be as ethical online as they are offline. So every market is different. Every strong local market knowledge is important no matter where you are, whether you're buying in a city, the suburbs, a country. If you want a real estate agent who knows local market trends and patterns like the back of their hand, where's the local grocer? Where's the local school? Where do I buy an office? Where do I rent an office? Where's the kindergarten? Where's the daycare center? Where's the hairdresser? Where's the doctor? Let them, ask these questions to see how much they know. So capable of providing accurate information, knowledge of the latest trends, new properties in the country, capable of assisting clients analyzing the condition of properties they're interested in, not just trying to sell something to your client and say, no matter how cruddy it looks, you're just trying to sell it to them anyway. Be honest. Honesty is the best policy. Have good research abilities to find the right property. We are not living today, agents, the country's expanded so much. You cannot be the master of everything. You can be the master of your own game. I love that expression. I watched a movie, and master of your own game. It was in the United Kingdom, and at the very end he said, you have to be the master of your own game. And it's always stuck with me. To be the master of your own game is where you succeed. And it was a beautiful story I used to watch at the United Kingdom. Amazing. But the master of your own game, but you cannot be a master of everything. You can be the master of your own game, but you cannot be the master of every single community in Dubai. It's not possible. But what you need to do is know how to research who does have that knowledge in that area, so you are able to provide that to your client, because your client ultimately is relying on you.
That network
that you have, and you need to have it. Strong local market knowledge. A good agent has a strong local network of service providers that you will need during the purchase of your property or investment, from mortgage brokers to interior designers to schools to you name it, etc. How can Realopedia help? We build relationships with associations, MLS, agents, brokerages, developers, industry specialists, and all the members of the industry. We're certified. Our members are certified and verified. The Real Estate Regulatory Agency endorsed us in 2016 as a trusted e-marketplace, and it continues. We're a network of real people, real connections. So there's no middleman. Who you are is who you are online. We're the global marketing partner of Miami Association of Realtors, partners of DREI, the Dubai Real Estate Institute. We continue to work with DREI on webinars and data and information that we expose through these lovely conversations with you, Hiba.
Anytime.
And global exposure with our alliances and partners. We're a dedicated ecosystem for the real estate industry. And last but not least, because we're running out of time, if you need any information, please call us. If you need any information about courses, please call Hiba. You will receive the presentation of today. Of course, we've added a lot of Q&A amongst us because it's very much into the topics of what we are talking about. Hope you enjoyed this presentation and the conversations. Please know that there are investor laws in Dubai. And last but not least, have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hiba, for being here.
Thank you, Laura.